So I just want to get just your initial take on this Nvidia report. Obviously, you're an investor in AI infrastructure, and you're investing in a lot of other companies that buy these chips.
Yeah, look, I think last time we talked, we were talking about the word on the ground in Paris, which was infrastructure independence, right? We are living in the golden era of AI deployment for the enterprise. This is basically the world's largest organization saying, hey, I can't sit around anymore debating whether I should use AI. They're now talking about deploying it. And if you ask, well, who are the world's largest enterprises? It's nation states. And so, about a year ago is when I was hearing nation state leaders debating and wondering what they should do about AI. Whereas now they've just pushed pedal to the metal and they're buying, they're building, and they've decided that AI models, frontier models, open source models in particular, are not just mission critical national and computing infrastructure. They've decided it's cultural infrastructure. And so I'm not basically very surprised at all to see, especially in the wake of DeepSeek R1, the gap closing between open source and closed source, that we're seeing such extraordinary demand for infrastructure and especially for NVIDIA chips. Now, obviously, the big story here is Blackwell's and reasoning models, right? And I think the big story here we should be paying attention to is that they've seen enormous growth in the sovereign AI segment. Jensen brought that up multiple times on his call. And that's what I look for. When you look below the hood, when you look under the earnings numbers, what are the actual technological drivers? Where's the demand actually coming from? And it's nation states going,
okay,
what they call what NVIDIA calls the sovereign AI segment, what is often called the regional cloud segment, where every country is realizing that they do not want to be colonized digitally. They want to own their own infrastructure. They want to build their own data centers, and they want to deploy models that are customized on their local values, their norms, their data sets.
So Anjane, about a year ago, I was actually working out of London, and I was talking to a lot of investors like yourself, and they were talking a lot about the sovereign cloud and the growth in that. Similar to what you're saying, they actually said that after seeing what the U.S. did with Russia, they were worried about being frozen out of cloud infrastructure from those big American players. But can you bottom line it for us when it comes to investors? Are you saying that the idea of sovereign cloud chip buying, that's not priced into this stock yet? I mean, what's the bottom line when we're looking at the stock and its performance?
Look, the bottom line is basically that the world's largest enterprises, which are nation states, are doubling down on inference, right? The idea that if you can throw more compute at these models and ask them to think for longer about your specific problem, that it actually works. And so I don't know if it's priced in or not. I think that can often detract from I think the more important dynamic, which is that given the new chips, the Blackwells are so good at the the reasoning model era, that open source models in particular are so good at being customized on what I call the last mile of local values, local norms, local customs. We are definitely seeing a regional race to build out local infrastructure, and NVIDIA seems to be, the top choice.
We got something else we want to get to, Anjane, but just very quickly, again, just bottom line it for us. You're on the board of Mistral, you're on the board of Luma AI, you've invested in Anthropic. Does that mean that these companies are buying these Blackwell chips, or they don't see the same need to buy them?
This is the quarter that I approved the highest amount of NVIDIA purchase orders that I've ever had to approve as a board member.
But Blackwell, to be clear, you're saying Blackwell chips.
For Blackwells. Okay. That's exactly right.
Anjane, stay right there just for a second. We have a news alert we want to get to. We want to get your reaction to it. So Microsoft is apparently urging President Trump to overhaul curbs on global AI chip exports. That's according to the Wall Street Journal, citing a blog post that's set to be published today. The Journal says the tech giant wants those rules to be loosened or even simplified specifically for U.S. allies, including India, Switzerland, and Israel. Anjane, I'd like to get your reaction to that.
I think, we've got to realize that AI is a piece of national critical infrastructure now for most countries, right? They've realized that in the history of technology, we've had maybe 20 or 22 general purpose technologies: electricity, the printing press, the internet, and most governments are now realizing that AI is one of those. And so when that happens, every major nation starts asking, do we build, do we buy, or partner, right? And at that moment, that's when the idea of an allied AI grid led by America, but that partners with our allies, especially in regions where we want our strategic interests to be allied towards the United States' interests relative to an adversarial nation like China, becomes really critical. And so I do think that extending and thinking about infrastructure independence as a coordination of allies across what we call the infrastructure stack, right? Chips, models, and applications is quite important. And every major nation.
All right. Yeah, one last very quick question, Andre. We got to get moving. We're seeing power stocks actually rebound since DeepSeek, which coincidentally was a month ago. They had a lot of volatility. What about when it comes to powering these data centers? Has that narrative changed that you need a lot of power to power these data centers with DeepSeek?
No, I think look, there's this idea we have in infrastructure called Jevons paradox, right? Which is the idea that when a resource becomes more efficient, like compute, it actually increases the total demand for that resource. Throughout the history of technology, if you look at coal, for example, which is where this law was sort of discovered, the falling prices of coal actually resulted in more electricity consumption, right? And so that's what's happening with compute, right? Even though compute is getting more efficient with models like DeepSeek, it's increasing the overall demand, which means the demand for power to allow these data centers to come online is just increasing.